and be able to repeat it. Answer the questions more right than wrong. You'll pass, you get the degree. Well, we've got people graduating from some of the most prestigious universities in the world every year with multiple degrees that are having difficulty finding work, that are broke. How does that happen? And yet you'll find other people who are functionally illiterate, they can neither read nor write, that are earning millions. How do we account for this? You're going to find that out as you study this. It's got nothing to do with anything outside of ourselves. Education isn't answering what's in the book. Education comes from the Latin educo, meaning to educe, to develop, or to draw from within. Remember I said, everything's already here, omnipresent? That's within us. Madame Montessori was right. Napoleon Hill was right. Carnegie knew the right question. Hill knew how to answer it. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? That's your question. You got to make a decision. We have here in the subconscious the paradigm, and part of the paradigm with respect to money is it's a poverty thing. Now, this paradigm impacts our thinking. There's a power flowing into our consciousness, and the thoughts we think are generally motivated by the subconscious mind. Now, something that I've been pointing out here recently on, look at this. The subconscious mind is universal intelligence. So when you have that paradigm in the subconscious mind, that controls the vibration that we're in, and the vibration we're in is going to dictate what we attract, because we're in that vibration here on a conscious level, on a subconscious level, and on a physical. So you're going to attract from anywhere you go in the universe the same type of thing. That's what we're attracting. So we're attracting people that are in harmony with this, and this paradigm causes our thinking to be along the same level. Now, we've got to realize, even in our ignorance, when we don't know and we haven't got anything, our thinking is hooked into universal intelligence. And you will attract from wherever it is in the universe, whatever is required to cause the problem. When you hear people say, you know, I just get one bill paid and another one pops up. Bang, they're going to attract it. And sure as it gets dark, they get it. Now that's ingrained in our mind from the time we're children. In fact, from the moment of conception in most of us. And then we grow into it, and that's what we hear as we're growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees, and over. You can't have everything you want, you know. And that is, that's got to be eliminated, and we've got to realize that is not fact. That you do not have to work harder, that you do less, and you earn more. And you've got to get the idea that you can have money coming in from many different places in the world, dragging it right into you. You attract it. And you can magnetize yourself to money in all different quantities. Although you cannot change conditions or circumstance, you don't have to let them control you. We can't control what's going on outside, but we can control what's going on inside. You know, and unfortunately, I don't think many of us have been raised to really understand that.
Yeah.
And it's a lack of understanding that's causing all our problems. We are the only creature on the planet that's totally disoriented in our environment. All the little squirrels, the birds, all the animals are completely at home in their environment. They blend in. You and I are totally disoriented in our environment. We've been given the mental faculties to create our own environment. However, we go right through school and we've never learned that. We have higher faculties, and the average person has no knowledge of how to operate with them, how to develop them. We have perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. Now, those mental faculties, they're not just words. They're actually mental faculties that we can use to take control over our world and to create the environment that we want. But unfortunately, we grow up, we don't know that. We've been raised to live through by what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, our physical senses. And we've been raised to be controlled by what's going on outside. As little kids, will you listen to what I'm telling you? Will you look at this? And so it's all outside. We get our report card, and that tells us what kind of student we are. But it really tells us where our mind was at for a few minutes 3 weeks ago. Got nothing to do with who we are. So I think we're raised in ignorance, actually. There's a very small percentage of the population that have a reasonably clear understanding of who they are and what they're capable of doing. But the ones that do are in the minority. The future must become the present in the imagination of the one who would wisely and consciously create circumstances. I think right now everybody wants to create circumstances because they don't like the ones they find themselves in. But you see, you cannot change the circumstance you find yourself in. You can only change your perception of them. And when you do that, you change the circumstance. So we say here, the future must become the present in the imagination of the one who would wisely and consciously create circumstance. We must translate vision into being. Thinking of into thinking from. Imagination must center itself in some state and then view the world from that state. See yourself where we want to be and then be there. Thinking from the end is an intense perception of the world of fulfilled desire. That is so cool. Thinking from the end is an intense perception of the world of fulfilled desire. So what are we doing? We're building a goal, and then we see ourselves already having accomplished the goal. Thinking from the end is an intense perception of the world of fulfilled desire. Already got it. I don't have to get it, I've already got it. That's an intense perception of the world of fulfilled desire. In other words, you got it. It's here. Now think. Are you thinking from the end or are you thinking of the end? If you're thinking of the end, your thinking is way out there. If you're thinking from the end, you're part of it. See, the end result has already happened in our mind. We're creative beings. We're God's highest form of creation. We can create in our consciousness the kind of person we want to be and then be that person. And that's what he said here. We must translate vision into being. So we don't just visualize it, we be it. I set a goal in 1973. I set a goal that I was going to build a company and operate all over the world. I had left the Nightingale Conant Corporation and decided that I was going to do this because I didn't agree with the way they were doing it. People weren't really learning it fast enough. They wouldn't get involved in the repetition. We were selling recordings, but the recordings weren't working because the people didn't understand how to use them. So I decided I would leave and start my own company. And I wrote down I'd build a company and operate it all over the world. I got a call last night from Mikey about 9 o'clock, something like that. And she told me that we were now in every country in the world. Now think of that. We had a broadcast going on here at 10 o'clock this morning. Some of you would be familiar with it, some of you may have been on it. And that broadcast had attracted thousands, literally thousands of people from every country in the world. The goal was reached. That move meant this is really accurate today. We're only limited by weakness of attention and poverty of imagination. Well, my imagination was pretty well exercised. I don't have any difficulty building huge ideas in my mind and just figuring out how to do it. Now stay with me here. The thing that's stopping you from taking the risk that you want to take is called a terror barrier. The way I'm going to explain this to you, I come up with sitting in a restaurant. I remember it was at a Holiday Inn restaurant. It was at Dixie and just south of the 401 highway in Toronto. A man asked me if I would meet with him. He had a problem, and I was going to show him how he could solve the problem. And he explained it, so I took a pen and some paper, and what I'm going to show you here is essentially what I showed him. Now, look at this for a moment. There is the process you go through when you're in a risk-taking vibration. You go from bondage to reason, to the terror barrier, and then to freedom. You go from bondage to reason, to the terror barrier, and then to freedom. But we have to go way back to 1908. Things were pretty primitive then relative to today. We weren't moving at the speed we're moving at now. Napoleon Hill was a young reporter for a little magazine. And someone, probably the editor, decided they would run a series of articles of interviewing wealthy people. Hill was fortunate enough to get an interview, a 3-hour interview, with the wealthiest man in the world, Andrew Carnegie. And he went and he sat and he interviewed him. Now, unbeknownst to Napoleon Hill, Andrew Carnegie was looking for someone that he could give a big project to. And he hadn't yet found anyone. At the end of the 3-hour interview, Andrew Carnegie said to Napoleon Hill, "Napoleon, this interview isn't ending, it's just beginning. I want you to come home with me." Hill said he was glad he took him home because he didn't have enough money to rent a hotel room. He spent 3 days with Andrew Carnegie, the wealthiest man in the world. Now think of this. Over those 3 days, Andrew Carnegie shared his philosophy. See, he started out as a poor boy, immigrated from Scotland with his parents just as a boy. They didn't have anything. So he went from nothing to be the wealthiest man in the world. And he shared with Napoleon Hill his whole philosophy. At the end of the 3 days, Carnegie decided that, I think this is the man I'm looking for. I guess he could tell by his level of interest in the story, the philosophy of what got him to where he was. There was probably a number of factors came into play, but Carnegie I think he's the guy. And so he asked him a question. Unbeknownst to Napoleon Hill, he only gave him 60 seconds to answer the question. And at the end of the 60 seconds, he would have to make a decision, a monumentous decision, if you think about it. He looked at him. He had a stopwatch in his hand under his desk. And he says, "Napoleon, you've spent 3 days with me. You know now how I've accomplished what I've accomplished." He says, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I just want a yes or no answer." Just a yes or no answer, Napoleon. He said, "Would you spend or invest the rest of your life in an idea for which you would probably receive no material compensation for at least 20 years? How would you answer that question? I've asked myself on many occasions how I would answer it. In 25 seconds, Napoleon Hill said yes, he would. He qualified. He passed the ESSA test. And he had to make a decision. That was a big decision. You're going to run up against decisions. This is one of the 13 principles. Napoleon Hill wrote a whole chapter on decision in his book, Think and Grow Rich. And right on the very first page, he points out that all successful people make decisions very fast. They change them very slow, if and when they change them at all. And he pointed out that people that are not successful make decisions very slow and change them fast and often. I guess that's why Andrew Carnegie gave him 60 seconds. If he took longer, he would be disqualified.
What's the thing that you still want to learn and understand that you feel like, you know what, I haven't fully grasped this concept or idea, and I really want to get to another level?
Well, I'm always wanting to get to another level. Hopefully, I'm at a higher level today than I was yesterday. I'm in here around 5:30 every morning studying.
Wow.
That's how I start my day here. Well, you see, there is no end to the growth. You always want to grow. So you're created in God's image. Now, there's a problem with this. Because we're raised on our physical senses, we grow up, and what we've done is had God created in our image, in our mind. Not that we're creating God's image. We're taught that we created God in our image. So now we're trying to figure out, how can the man be omnipresent? How can that person be everywhere? And because we're locked in on a physical level, we get lost. When we understand that you have infinite potential, there is no top. There's no beginning, no end. See, when it comes to School of Greatness, there's no finish line.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to personal development, there is no finish line. So how can you tell how well you're doing? By the results you're getting. By their fruit. By their fruit, you'll know them. By the results they're getting. If they're not getting the results, they don't know. So if you're going to get a mentor, get somebody that's getting the results.
Yeah.
Or you don't want them. Now, you see here on page 6, it says money is a servant. It's a servant. Now, there's a myth about money. Says another myth about money, like you accept money, is that it only comes as a result of luck or good fortune. Well, of course, that is really silly. That's not true at all. But that's the concept that a lot of people operate with, okay? Now, if you move over onto page 7, we're talking about money's got to circulate. It's not only a servant, you got to keep it moving. I have some money here in my pocket. I keep it in a little envelope, and this stuff here is money. The truth is, this represents money. Now, this used to be paper. Now I think it's plastic. Use it as a fan. But this it's a servant, and you can put this to work. You got to keep it circulating. Now, we tell a story in here about Mr. Chapman. Now, Mr. Chapman was an interesting guy. He lived on the street that I lived on as a little boy. And my brother and I had a paper route, and we sold papers to the people on that street. We had 300 customers, went right from Kingston Road to the Lake Ontario. And almost every house we had as a customer. Mr. Chapman had a big house not too far from our house, up on a hill. It was an old house. And one day, Mr. Chapman, we used to feel sorry for him. He was hunchback. He was a little man. He used to push a little cart around, and he collected junk. His wife was a tall, thin lady, and she always wore just skimpy clothes, like a cotton dress with maybe a little coat, running shoes, and she would be off up the street. She went to clean houses or clean offices. We thought they were really poor. Well, one day we opened the paper. We went up the corner to get the papers, and when we got the delivery of the papers, it was headlines that Mr. Chapman had died. It was a headline in the Toronto Star. They found $100,000 in a jar in the house. Here he is collecting junk, and he had $100,000 in a jar in the house. Now, I just looked up that up this morning. That's equal to $1,087,798 in today's dollars. That's what $100,000 in 1947 would have been. In today's dollars, it'd be over $1 million, $1,087,088,000. He had all this money, and he had it in a jar. It was serving no one. It wasn't circulating. And we were shocked that he even had it. So what we've got to understand is that saving it like that is silly. Like here, the money that's in this envelope in my pocket, it's useless as long as it's in an envelope in my pocket. It does no one any good. You may be saying, why are you keeping it there? It won't stay there very long. I'll have it circulating in a very short period of time. Now, if you come down to the bottom of page 9, these are just basics. We're talking about here about a prosperity consciousness exercise. Now that we have touched upon some of the characteristics of money, let us turn briefly to a simple technique which you can begin using immediately to start attracting the amount of money that you desire. Now think of that. You can literally attract to you the amount of money you desire. You've got to ask yourself, where do I stand with money? You're building an idea and you're planting it in universal intelligence. Now, when you do that, what you want to understand is that you planted that idea here. That idea then is planted in universal intelligence, so it's drawing from anywhere, anything that's in harmony with it. You see, this is a vibration. It's a frequency. And we have put ourselves on a specific frequency. When you hold that idea, when you're emotionally involved, that must be expressed with and through you. Whatever you need is in the universe, and this idea is going to attract it to you. Because the idea controls the vibration that you're in. The vibration you're in controls how you act, but it also controls what you attract. This is very important you get this. Your subconscious mind is like universal intelligence. And that idea then is on a specific frequency. Hold on. We're spiritual beings. This is the spiritual side of you. Now, everything's spirit, the intellect and the physical. But when you plant the idea here, it's planted on a specific frequency. It's almost like when I phone somebody, what I'm doing is I'm tuning in on a particular frequency. And they're on that frequency. And when I press a number, their phone rings. Doesn't matter where they are. They could be anywhere in the world. You see, when it comes to universal intelligence, you eliminate all time and space. There's no such thing as time and space. Everything's in the now. Everything is in the now. And it's important that we understand that. And when we understand it, good things start to happen to us. Okay? Now, that idea will attract to it anything that's in harmony with it. So whatever you need will come to you. But it won't come to you before you need it. And we're very impatient and we want to do this part before we get this part done. You got to do things in the order. You see, this part is operating by law. It's operating by law because it's universal intelligence, and the law is perpetual transmutation of energy. That idea instantly begins to move into form. And it attracts whatever is required. But it also causes you to act the way you have to act. So it's the action and attraction that ultimately produces the result. How long does it take for that to manifest? We don't know. That's governed by a law called law of gender. That law decrees that all things have a gestation or an incubation period. See, the only criteria you have to have when you set a goal is, do you want it? Do you want it? Doesn't matter how you're going to do it. It doesn't matter where the money's coming from. I once heard a cute story where the Maharishi, when he was taking transcendental meditation or decided he was going to take it to the world, one of his close associates said, "Where's the money going to come from?" He said, "Wherever it is right now." I always thought it was such a beautiful answer because it's the truth. Everything you need, everything you want is already here. Nothing is created or destroyed. I didn't dream this up. It's the way it is. All science, all theology tell us that. The way to get the moon was already here, always here. When President John Kennedy asked Dr. Wernher von Braun, who's considered the father of space travel, what it would take to build a rocket that would carry a man to the moon and bring him back safely to Earth. Von Braun answered him in 5 words: the will to do it. The will to do it. Will is a mental faculty that gives us the ability to concentrate. You got to concentrate on what you want. That's all you can concentrate on. And that will keep you on the frequency that you have to be on to attract everything that you need to get there. This is so important. You see, I believe decision where it all starts. It's where it all started for Napoleon Hill. It all started when Carnegie asked him, are you prepared to dedicate the rest of your life to an idea for which you'll probably receive no material compensation for at least 20 years? How would you answer that? You see, he didn't know how to do that. He didn't even believe he could. Do you know what I found? When you set a goal, you don't have to believe it. If you keep repeating it, you'll come to believe it. If you tell yourself a lie often enough, you'll believe it. Way back in 1900, William James from Harvard, he said, believe, and your belief will create the fact. So true, and so misunderstood. So what do you want? Compare your dream to Napoleon Hill's idea. Just compare it for a moment. Your idea is probably small by comparison, but if you don't know how to do it, if you don't know where the money's coming from, if you don't know where the help's going to come from, it'll probably seem large. When I took my pen and I sat down and I wrote, I would build a company that operated all over the world. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I certainly didn't have the finances to do it. I didn't have the help. I didn't even have an assistant. I was just me in my den writing on a pad. Do you know something? Today, I own a company along with Sandy Gallagher, who is my business partner, and we operate all over the world. These aren't accidents. I'm just an ordinary guy that's doing what the public would consider something extraordinary. But it's not extraordinary to me, and it's not going to be to you when you start to understand these principles and incorporate them into your life. I mentioned we want to build schools in Africa for kids that have never seen a school. And so we're building them. There's many things we want to do. We do them all. I never wonder if I can do something. I just ask myself, do I want to? That's the way I think God meant us to live. I believe we're doing God's work. Somebody say, what's God's work? Well, if God's the creator, then God's work would be creation. We've been given the mental faculties to create. We've been created in God's image. Somewhere along the line, way back when, somebody got that mixed up. They thought when they said you're creating God's image, that God was created in their image, so they're looking for a man on a cloud. There is no man on a cloud. But I'm going to tell you something. You got some phenomenal stuff locked up inside of you. You bring it to the surface, you can have anything you want. It's a great way to live. It's pretty well known today there's a lot of fear in the world. People are wondering what's going to happen. We've gone through many tough times if you study history. I was born during the Great Depression. So I was of an age then, I remember some of the things as a little kid. Then we went into a world war. And when the Depression ended, it was sort of like a theater where the lights were out. It was empty, but the lights started to come up and things started to get brighter. And of course, they became very bright. So the fear, don't let fear control you. Fear is a negative emotion. By following these principles, you're going to be on the other side of fear, where there's faith. There's a law of the universe called polarity. That law decrees everything has an opposite. Every negative has a positive. The truth is, it's neither positive or negative. It's our thinking that makes it so. Everything just is. We can make it what we want. Make up your mind now. You're going to go in the positive polarity. You're going to stay with me because that's where I'm going. And there'll be a very bright future. Let the fear go. It isn't necessary. The cause of it is ignorance. The cause of all fear is ignorance. If you want something you haven't got, you got to create a space for it. If it's in your own mind, you've got to let go of something. So what do we want to do to let go of? We want to let go of the image we've got for the one we're going to build. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When I started to do this, I tested it I thought, I wonder if this really worked. And I found that it really worked. So I went all out. And you start out by writing the image that you want to hold. I'll tell you how I did it. I took various people that I really admired, and I took some of the qualities that I really admired in them, and I'd write them down. I wasn't going to be like them, but I was going to develop a couple of these qualities or habits. When I was growing up, I was a young guy, it was during the Second World War. There was no men around, no fathers. But one guy did have a father. Donnie Miller's father was not well, so he couldn't go to the war. And Donnie's dad had a heart attack, or something. I think it was a heart attack. And so we never went around his place because his dad wanted things quiet. They'd come around our place, but not Donnie's place. I would watch Donnie's dad walk up and down the street. You'd see him go way up the street. Later on, you'd see him come back. He was always well-dressed, and he had the calmest walk. There was no rush, just a very calm walk. I visualize myself walking like him. You'll very rarely ever see me rushing anywhere. There's no need of it. You can be calm. So when I built my self-image, I built it around certain things. Ray Stanford always had money. I told you earlier. I don't know how to get into this thing now. Always have some money. Always. Now, I hardly ever use it because I really don't pay for very much. I get somebody in the company to order whatever I want. But you see, I never had any money. Ray always had a roll on him. He would have a roll like that in his pocket all the time. Now, there's about $3,000 here. There's not about, there is $3,000 here. You see? Well, I only earned $4,000 a year at that time. $3,000 would have been a ton of money. But everybody has different little quirks. I like to carry money. And it's probably because I never had any. And now I have some money. I want to carry it. But you see, I started to do that before I had any money. And I would take and I would put phony money in a roll, but I would have the right thing on the outside. It was the thickness of it. My mind didn't know the difference. I knew intellectually the difference, and then shortly I didn't even pay any difference to that. It was the feel of it. I did different things. I watched different people. I saw how this person did this and somebody else did that. I read a lot, so I read a lot of great self-help books. And I literally did what some of these books suggested. It wasn't just sometimes, I did it. I would follow it right to a T. You'll very rarely see me without a suit on. That's part of the paradigm. It's part of the paradigm. I don't care what anybody else does, how they dress. I'm always going to be dressed. I mentally made up my mind one time I'd be at least, if I wasn't the best dressed, one of the best dressed people in the room. Why did I do that? I did that because I was changing how I saw me. How I saw me. I had never gone to school. I had no money. I had dumb jobs. And today, along with Sandy Gallagher, I have a company that operates all over the world. Right here on my desk, I have sitting this little hourglass. Well, you know, I can't put anything where that hourglass is until I get rid of it. And we find that we want things to come into our life, but we don't create room for them. Nature abhors a vacuum. I remember we were sitting in the living room having a cup of coffee and just visiting. And she said, "Do you mind if we go and sit in the kitchen?" And I said, "Not at all." So I asked her, I said, "Why do you want to sit in the kitchen rather than here?" She says, "I can't stand that room. I just hate living in that, sitting in that room." She says, "I hate those curtains that are on the window, the dining room window, the drapes on the front window." And I said, "No, you don't hate those, Mark." I said, "You only have attract things to you that you love, that you're in harmony with." I said, "If you really didn't love them, you get rid of them." But she said, I'm going to put them there if I get rid of them. I said, Mark, if you had something to put there, you couldn't put it there because you've already got something there. And I said, that's when I started to teach her the law of vacuum law prosperity. So anyway, she went and got a chair and got up and stood on it. She started to take all these curtains down. Well, Don, he was roaring like a stuffed pig. He said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm getting rid of these. And she did. Wasn't too long after I dropped in, all the furniture in the living room was gone. It was like they were just moving into the place. But then they got new curtains, and then they got new furniture. And you know, everything in that house changed. Wasn't too long they were in business for themselves. They're both gone now. But when they left, they were fairly well off. They had a beautiful place in Florida they'd go to in winter. The family still runs their own business. I mean, it was such a beautiful thing to see. And it was all, and I tell the story in here because it was all about the vacuum law of prosperity. Well, what have you got in your life that you don't want or that you don't like? Or what is it that you've got that you really want to get rid of? You've got to get rid of this stuff. Get rid of it. Give it away. See, nature truly does abhor a vacuum. When you make space for the good that you desire, that's when the good's going to come. Most people don't make the space for the good that they desire. Now, the law of polarity decrees everything as an opposite. You couldn't have an in without an out, or an up without a down, or a hot without a cold. Every positive has a negative, so every problem has an opportunity. Now, the truth is, there's no such thing as problems or opportunities. Everything just is. It's how we look at it. It is what it is. That's it. Now, if we see something bad, why don't we say, hold on a minute. It's my perception that's messed up here. If I stare at this long enough, I'm going to see what's good in it. There has to be good in it. You couldn't have an inside to a room without having an outside. Couldn't possibly have up without having down. That's just the law of polarity. It decrees everything has an opposite. I don't care what you look at, there's an opposite. You see something really good, it's also real bad. Now think of this. If it's only a short way up onto my desk, it's only a short way down off my desk. If it's a long way to the top, it's a long ways to the bottom. You can't have a long way up and a short way down. It doesn't work that way. They're equal and opposite. If it's very good, it's very bad. If it's very bad, it's very good. So you got a big problem, get excited. You got a big opportunity. I think we should be thinking about the greatness, like it's the school of greatness. I think we ought to be thinking about the greatness that we've got locked up within us and bring it to the surface. Everyone has deep reservoirs of talent and ability within them, and they can bring it to the surface to accomplish anything they want. Now, to sit in fear and wonder what's going to happen, that is a dumb waste of your talent and your time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what most of the media is promoting right now. To believe in fear is to believe in something you can't see. To believe in faith is to believe in something you can't see. Well, if you have a choice, I think I'd choose faith over fear.
Absolutely.
I think I believe where I can really see something happen. I believe we're going to have a phenomenal year in our company.
Wow.
In fact, I have business partner, Sandy Gallagher, and a very bright lady, was a securities attorney prior to joining us. She ran a program this morning for our entire company. We have about 70 people in the company. She was teaching masterminding to them all and saying how this is important, that every one of us get involved in this, that we learn the basics of masterminding, that Napoleon Hill brought to the world, let's say, way back in the 30s. Now, I think that's what we should be teaching people. Sandy was on the right track there. So I think we ought to be thinking about what we're going to build. How big are we going to do it? Where are we going to do it? When are we going to start? Our goals have not changed. They're very big. They're very ambitious. And we're not letting this virus slow us down one bit.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we're trying to figure out how can we use this to speed it up.
There
It's
you go.
a chair and you can't get rid of it. Use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
There is a way we can use it to our advantage. People are more dependent upon the phone. I've got a computer here. They're dependent on their phone, their computer, more than they've ever been. we can reach them anywhere in the world through those meetings. Now, Carnegie said to Hill, he said, now, Napoleon, I'm going to introduce you to some of the world's most successful people. He said, I'm going to give you letters of introduction. You'll receive no subsidy from me. I want you to go out and write the laws of achievement. He says, it's a shame that people like myself are going to their grave with all this knowledge locked up in their bones. He said, I want it organized. And I want you to organize it. I will give you letters of introduction, and then you're on your own. Now, he said, you're going to run into many tough times, Napoleon. No question about that. So he said, I'm going to give you something that'll help you through those tough times. I want you to write this out. I want you to write every word. No one's going to underline every word. Now, he said, this is a message that you're going to give from yourself to yourself, Napoleon. So it's going to be you talking to you. I want you to write down Andrew Carnegie. I'm not only going to equal your achievements in life, I'm going to meet you at the post and pass you at the grandstand. Well, as the story goes, he threw his pencil on the floor. He says, now you know darn well I'm not going to be able to do that. He says, I know you're not Napoleon, unless and until you believe it. But I want you to repeat that every morning, and I want you to repeat it every night. I want you to look in the mirror, and I want you to repeat that. Looking in your eye, say, Andrew Carnegie, I'm not only going to equal your achievements in life, I'm going to meet you at the post, and I'm going to pass you at the grandstand. Now, that wasn't an easy thing for Hill to do. He was living with his brother. He had promised his brother that he was going to pay for him to go through college. Now he was going to have to go home and tell his brother he couldn't do that. He had a project that he was working on. It was going to take all his time, and it was going to take every cent that he could get for himself. Then he was afraid to tell his brother what he was going to do because he thought his brother would think he had lost his mind. He's going to work on a 20-year project. Nobody's giving him any money. Nobody's going to pay him. The first day he went and he locked himself in the bathroom. And he looked in the mirror and he whispered it. Andrew Carnegie, I'm not only going to equal your achievements in life, I'm going to meet you at the post and I'm going to pass you at the grandstand. You know, he said he felt when he was saying like he was a darn fool. He said, this isn't going to happen. But he said, I made a commitment that I would do this, so I better do it. So every morning and every night he would do this. Now, he had committed that he would do it for 30 days. Around the middle of the month, he started to think maybe it could happen. By the end of the month, he knew it would happen. Now, I've done a fair amount of study on this over the last 50 years, and anything I've been able to discover is that Carnegie made somewhere in the vicinity of 50 millionaires. Some people say 20. I've read 23. I've read 50. Napoleon Hill has made millions of millionaires. So you see, he did equal his achievements. He went past his achievements, and he did pass them at the grandstand. Here's a poor boy, a young cub reporter for a magazine. How did he do that? Why did he do that? I think he did it strictly on the belief that Carnegie wasn't going to ask him to do anything that was unjust. But why is it that all successful people make decisions very fast and change them slow? And he found out that was true in his research with all these giants. Well, you know, I have never stopped studying it. I probably never will stop studying it. And I'm going to show you something about decision that has the potential to change your life forever. You see, I wanted to know, why do successful people make decisions when they have absolutely no idea how they're going to make it happen? There's a reason for it. Now, many of them are unconscious competence. They don't know why they do. That's just the way they do it. You can become a conscious competent with what I'm going to show you. Now, do you see, it all starts with our own thinking. See, vibration is a law of the universe. Everything vibrates, nothing rests. Look at the walls around you. They're vibrating. They appear to be still. They're really not still. Look at them through a microscope. You'll see the energy dancing in front of your eyes. Go take a look at a body in a coffin. Now you'll think I'm really losing it here, but listen and think. Look at the body through a microscope. It is not dead. That body's moving. It's moving so fast it appears to be still. And if it wasn't moving, how would it ever change to dust? Everything moves. We live in an ocean of motion. Make no mistake about it. Every level of vibration is referred to as a frequency, and the beautiful truth is we think on frequencies. Do you know that every great leader that has ever lived, every one of them, they've been in complete unanimous agreement on one point. They've disagreed on virtually everything else. But this one point they've been in agreement on, that we become what we think about. Solomon put it very well. He was a pretty bright guy. He said, as a person thinketh in their heart. It's not just the thoughts that are running across the screen of your conscious minds. It's the ones you internalize. We truly do become what we think about. See, the thoughts that we're thinking produce the results that we're getting. The law of rhythm is a law. We have a biorhythm. We go up and down. We live simultaneously on three planes. We're triune beings. We're spiritual, intellectual, and physical. Well, all three is on a rhythm cycle. And we have critical highs and critical lows. That's when all three parts of us are on a critical high, all three parts of us on a very low. Do you know there's airlines that will not let their pilots fly when they're on a critical low? They won't let them fly. They just ground them. You can have this charted. I have people come up and ask me questions sometimes. I know what they want to do. They want to chart my rhythm cycle. And I give them the dates and the things they want. But when they bring it to me, I don't pay any attention to it. I don't want to know that I'm on a low swing. I want to know that I am in control of me, and I don't care whether I'm on a low swing or a high swing. I don't even make it good, because I'm going to look for the good in it. So we understand that. There's that time of the month, you know. That's not just for the girls, that's for the boys too, because that is a rhythm cycle in life, and it affects all three parts. There's going to be parts when you're on a very high intellectually. You have a column of figures, boom, like that, you add them up. Another time you add up that column, you have to add it up 6 times, you get a different answer every time. You're on a low swing intellectually. There's sometimes when you're on a low swing emotionally. You walk down the street and nothing's going right. There's other days you walk down, you're skipping with the kids, you're singing with the birds, you're on a high. That's a rhythm process of life.
How do we reshape our self-image to serve us as opposed to bring us down?
Well, it's interesting. Maxwell Maltz actually discovered self-image as we know it today. He was a cosmetic surgeon, and he found if he operated on a person, maybe they had a distasteful scar in their face, and he removed the scar, he said, sometimes there was a phenomenal change in the person's personality. But he said other times they'd remove the scar, it was very successful, no change in their personality. That led him to postulate that we not only have this physical image that reflects back from the mirror, we have an inner image of ourselves. It's how we see ourselves.
Right.
Now that inner image is an idea, and that idea is generally planted in our little life when we're infants. And it's planted by virtue of the environment that we're surrounded by, how we're raised. If a child's raised with praise, they're going to grow up very confident individuals. If a child's raised with criticism, they're going to grow up very insecure. So you see this image that we have, it's a picture of how we see ourselves, but most of us, that image was planted by people that didn't know what the hell was going on. They didn't know the war was over, and they were developing a little mind. It was a mind. They were shaping it like fresh clay. They didn't understand that. It was a kid they're looking after, and we feed him, we keep him warm. What the hell? You know, that's our responsibility. No, it was a mind, and they were developing that mind. And if they didn't understand, what were they going to put in? Well, all they could give to the child is the insecurities that they had themselves. So that was the picture that the kid grows up of themselves. Now, I grew up very insecure. I was born during the Depression. When I first went to school, the Second World War had just broken out, so everybody's rationed for everything. It was hard times. All the men were away fighting in Europe or South Pacific. There was no men doing anything. The women that were there were driving the trucks. They were cops. They did everything. So there wasn't a whole lot of time used for developing a little mind. So I just grew up and picked up what I could. And I grew up very insecure. It wasn't until I met a man that gave me this book and gave me some damn good instruction that I started to pay attention to who I was. And I have never stopped being fascinated with studying me.
Yeah.
I am the most fascinating subject that I've ever come across. And I have found out that you and I are exactly the same. We only appear to be different. Our physical body looks different. We choose different vocations. Some earns more or less than the other. But our potential is exactly the same. We both live in a physical body. We both have these higher mental faculties. We're both spiritual beings. We both draw on an infinite source of supply. We're the same. So the trick, I think, for the person that has insecurities, that hasn't got the strongest image they want, they should find a damn good mentor. That's what changed my life. First of all, the cause of fear is ignorance. That is the cause of fear. And so if you follow the ignorance, it doesn't start out as fear. The ignorance starts out in a conscious level as doubt and worry. Mm-hmm. That's on a conscious level. We're doubting or we're worrying. Then we take whatever image comes into our consciousness of the doubt and the worry, and we turn it over to our emotional mind. That's what causes the fear. Well, that fear then has to be expressed through the body, through the only instrument it can be expressed through, our physical body. It sets up a vibration known as anxiety. Mm-hmm. Anxiety is not expressed. Anxiety becomes suppressed.
Ooh.
We suppress it. And the suppression then turns to depression, which turns to disease, which turns to decay. You see, you're talking about a track a person gets on. It's a very negative track. It's ignorance, doubt, worry, fear, anxiety, suppression, depression, disease, disintegration. Now, the polar opposite of all that, the opposite of ignorance is knowledge. There's only one way to get to knowledge, and that is to study. Now, unfortunately, school didn't do the job that it was designed to do for most of us. Mm-hmm. School should teach us to love to study.
Not to dread studying and homework and tests.
They should teach us to love it. Yeah. Because study leads to the opposite of doubt and worry, which is understanding. See, it's study that leads to understanding. We understand how to handle the fear. It's understanding that enables us to cause us to understand where the fear starts. The understanding, then, we want to say, what do we understand? We want to understand this whole universe operates by law. One of the laws is the law of opposite. The opposite of doubt and worry is understanding. Now, if the doubt and worry leads to fear, what's understanding leads to? Understanding leads to faith. The faith leads to expression, well-being, and expression. It's not depression. It's not suppression. It's not anxiety. The faith leads to well-being. The well-being then is expression, acceleration, because we're at ease. There's not dis-ease. So you're dealing with polar opposites. There's two different sides to things. And when we understand that, our world starts to change. It's by understanding that we learn how to deal with these pandemics when they hit. Mm-hmm. And they will hit. There will be others. There always has been, all down through history. If you look back, there's been things like this happen in the past. And unfortunately, the masses are sort of paralyzed by it. No amount of reading or memorizing is going to make you successful. It's the understanding and application of wise stuff that can. You're going to study this. I study it every day, for at least an hour. sometimes more, but at least an hour. It's a habit. Habit's something you do unconsciously. You don't even spend any time thinking about it. You just do it. You get dressed by habit. You shower, comb, wash your hair. Habit. Do you know good habits automatically transform our life? The purpose of a goal is not to get, it's not to reach the goal. It's the awareness that you develop as you go after it. You're learning who you are. It's becoming aware of who you are.
Yeah.
I was in a seminar years and years ago, and there was a speaker, Bill Gove. Bill Gove was considered the Frank Sinatra of public speakers. He was incredible. He had a handheld mic, and he's looking at the audience, and he said, if I want to be free, I've got to be me. Not the me I think you think I should be. Not the me I think my kids think I should be. Not the me I think my wife thinks I should be. If I want to be free, I've got to be me. He said, I better know who me is. We do live in an ocean of motion. The dynamic law of life is create or disintegrate. You're never going to stay where you are. Following what we're teaching, you're going to create. It's a beautiful part. So we're looking at our results and we're saying, but this is where I really want to go. And we point to a star that we're shooting at. And we make a decision, that's what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, everybody does that. And 90-some% say, when this improves, then I'm going to do that. Do you know, it'll never happen. It will never happen because you're not on the right frequency. And you see what happens here, pretty soon the decision fades. And when it fades, so does the goal. The goal disappears. Somebody said, I thought you were working. Yeah, well, I am. I'm still working at it. Do you know what the problem is? You're thinking on the wrong frequency. You see, your thought is down here on the frequency that you're living on. But the way to do what you want to do is not on that frequency. Clearly understand this. All science and all theology, the only two sources of reference we have to go to, tell us nothing is created or destroyed. The way to do anything is already here. Space travel, we've always been able to do it. We just weren't aware of how. You know the neat little cell phones we've got that pretty soon will be obsolete? We've always been able to do that. I remember back when we had the party lines. Hardly anybody had a phone. And then when they got one, they got a party line. Everybody's on the line. We were able to build beautiful little cell phones then. Do you know the cell phone you've got has more power as a computer than the computer that took the first rocket to the moon? It's magnificent when you think of what we're doing. And it's all in awareness. And that's what you're developing. You're developing awareness. See, the awareness to do everything is already here, but you've got to get on the frequency that it operates on, because everything operates on a frequency. If you phoned your Uncle Harry, you wouldn't expect your mother to answer the phone. Why? Because you dialed Harry's number. You got on Harry's frequency. That's what the number is. It's a frequency. And there's a zillion of them. We know there's an infinite number of frequencies. Everything you want is already here. What you have to do is attract it. And you know something? You're going to learn how to do that. You see, what we really have to do, we need to make a paradigm shift. We're programmed to operate the way we're operating. Why would 97 or 95% of the population keep using a losing formula? They don't know they are. They're giving it everything they've got. We had to shift our thinking. We got to shift the paradigm. Do you know many of the beliefs and the ideas that are controlling your decision-making right now? They were established by some great-grandparent who lived in a different time. But all that stuff is passed down in the genes. It's called genetic conditioning. We got to change that. You see, well, you're thinking way down here on this lower frequency. The way to do what you want to do is way up here on a higher frequency. And what's required is a committed decision. A committed decision is when you do it regardless. And when you make a committed decision, this is what I'm going to do, you flip your brain onto that higher frequency, and the way is shown. Now we're going to talk about your sixth sense, your intuitive mind, because that's how it comes to you. You're tapping into universal intelligence. That's what all highly successful people do. Whether they know they're doing it or not is irrelevant. But that's what they're doing. That's what you're going to learn how to do. He thinks it's true. I think reason is probably, it's the one that's spoken about by almost all the great leaders.
Yeah.
They've all been complete unanimous agreement that we become what we think about. It's our reasoning factor that enables us to think. Ford says thinking's the hardest work there is, which is the probable reason so few people engage in it. Dr. Ken McFarland, who's gone for a long time now, but he was a great educator down in Kentucky. He one time said 2% of the people think, 3% think they think, and 95% would actually rather die than think. Now, you know, that sounds cute, but it's true. If you stop and listen to what most people are saying, it's going to be fairly obvious they're not thinking. If you stand back and watch what most people are doing, it's fairly obvious they're not thinking, or they would never say or do what they're doing. Most people today have their television on the news, and they're just soaking up all the stuff that's going on that's dominating the media right now. So they've become a plaything for what's going on outside. And that's why they're living in such fear.
By consuming the media of whether it's true or accurate or not true, you're being manipulated in a sense. Yeah.
It's not a matter of whether it's true or not. Is this how you want to spend your life, just listening to that? That doesn't mean you should deny it. It doesn't mean that you should say, well, that's all false. I don't know whether it's true or false. It's just bad news. I don't want to be involved in it.
Yeah.
Am I aware that it's there? Well, you'd almost have to be dead not to be aware that it's there. But that doesn't mean you have to spend your time thinking on that. I would much rather activate some of my creative faculties and do something that's constructive. We are building a picture in our mind here. This is an idea. We could say it's a goal. Then we impress that idea upon this part of our personality. That's the idea in our mind. Now, what we've got to understand is that this part of our mind, the subjective mind, is actually universal intelligence. And this is really the way it is. When you press the idea upon your subconscious mind, you are universally everywhere. Now, to help you think of that, well, here's a phone. Let's suppose you're in, Buenos Aires, and I'm right here in North America, Toronto. And I dial your number. I've got you on the phone. Time and space means nothing because I've got onto that frequency. And so you and I can communicate. We're connected. One person's in Buenos Aires, or you could say Singapore, you could say Shanghai, and another one is in New York or in Toronto, but they're connected. Why? The time and space means nothing because you're dealing with energy and you're dealing with laws. Now, when you impress this idea upon the subconscious mind is universal intelligence. And everything, anywhere in the universe that's in harmony, that is a frequency. Understand that. That idea is a frequency. It's operating on a frequency. And so everything that's in harmony with it begins to move toward it. Because it's in harmonious vibration and you attract it. Now, throw a slide up, Scott. Look here for a moment. Soren Kierkegaard wrote something really great on intuition. He said, listen. You got to listen. You listen with your emotions. We can only get in touch with our own source of intuition and wisdom when we no longer depend upon others' opinions for our sense of identity or worth. We all tend to worship something. The question is, will we worship the God of opinion or the God of our heart? I found I had less and less to say until finally I became silent and began to listen. I discovered in the silence the voice of God. Now look at, you're going to attract to you everything that you require to manifest the idea in your mind. Thoughts will come to you. It's your intuition that picks them up and then act on them. And just because you've never gone there before, you've never done it before, that's okay. This is where courage comes in. This is where awareness and wisdom comes in. See, intuition is the mental faculty. Go back to our slide here for a moment, Scott. Intuition is here in our conscious mind. It's one of our intellectual factors. We have perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition, right here. Now, intuition is that mental faculty on a conscious level. We pick up thoughts that are flying our way. They're flying our way. What are they? It's energy that's in harmony with you. You've got on the frequency of this good that you desire. And you're going to start attracting. And that's what Kierkegaard said. We got to start listening. We listen with our emotions. Let's pay attention to what's coming our way. I didn't like the idea that when you've lived for so long, you've got to cut out, you've got to stop. I thought, hell, I don't like that idea at all. First of all, I think I believe we're here to do God's work. God's work is creation, expansion, fuller expression, greater goodness. And if we're going to do that, we're going to be working at it all the time we're here on this planet. We never stop. So age should have no bearing on it. Mm-hmm. I had a couple of people ask me when we started to build this place, we put a couple of $1 million into this, and somebody said, how old are you? And I think I was probably 83 when they started to break ground. They said, you're 83 and you're going to spend $2 million building a studio? And I said, yeah, why not? I mean, you see, we let things that really have no concern, we let them bother us, we let them control us. Mm. Age is a dumb thing to let control you. It's our thinking that controls everything. That's the one point every great leader agreed on. We become what we think about. Well, what's a person thinking? I'm thinking if I get old, I got to stop. Well, then you'll stop. Mm. Or I'm thinking, well, if I've been here a long time, I've got a lot of experience. I want to utilize that experience to keep me going as long as I am here. Don Shula, the coach of the old Miami Dolphins, he said it's the start that stops most people. And he's right. It is the start that stops most people. They're always going to get ready, to get set, to get going. What we've got to do is, boom, just like that, move into action. See, if you don't get started, you're never going to get finished. How do we do that? Start early. I believe when you wake up, you should get up. The second you wake up, get your feet hit the floor, move into action. And you'd be wise if you sit down at night before you go to bed and write down 6 goal-achieving activities. Now, that isn't go to the store or go to the bank or get to cleaning. It's not that. These are goal-achieving activities. Write down 6 of them. And when you wake up in the morning, you move into action. You know where you're going to go. You don't even have to think about it. Step into action and get on the first one. When you get it done, forget it and go to the second one. Don't think about the first one. Focus on 2. Don't even think about 3. When you get 2 done, go to 3. But knock them off one at a time. If you don't get them all done, just move them over on to the next day. Now, that doesn't mean if you only get 3 done that you have 9 the next day. There are 3 of the 6 that you're going to do the next day. 6 goal-achieving activities. And when you wake up in the morning, move into action on them. Quit holding yourself back. Don't wait. You say, well, I really don't know how I'm going to get started, and the way will show itself. It just appears. I have found when you get started, when you move into action, everything starts to happen around you. Now fill in the card, get the information.
I have worked all over the world. I mean, all over Asia, China, South America, North America, Europe. And I'm always asking people, what do you really want? And I have found most people don't want to be really wealthy. What they do want is they don't want to have any financial concerns. If they want to buy a new suit, they can go and get one. If they want to take a trip, they can take the trip. If they want a new car, they can get the new car. They don't want to just run out and spend or buy. They don't want to have any financial concerns. 2, they want to wake up in the morning excited about how they're going to spend their day. Oof. And the 3rd, they want to mix with people who are upbeat and creatively productive. Those are the 3 things that people really want. So in answer to your question, if somebody's watching, what's the first thing they should do? Well, the first thing they should do is understand why we have goals. Not just to set a goal, because most people don't set goals right. They're operating with a limited level of consciousness, so they're thinking, if I could get a little more money, and if I could get him to help me and her to help me, and this happened, then I could do this. Maybe this is get a new car. What we've got to understand is we're trading our life for our goals. Literally trading our life. Would you trade your life for a car or a house? I don't think so. So it's got to be something really meaningful. And we're not taught to think this way. We should sit down and don't give any thought to where the money's going to come from, where the help's going to come from. It's what do you really want? Like Ed Hillary was a beekeeper in Auckland.
That story.
He wanted to climb Mount Everest. It had never been done. People died trying to do it. He went in 51 and failed. He went back in 52 and failed. In 1953, he stood on top of the mountain with Tenzing Norgay. But he didn't know how to get there until after he had got there. Edison didn't know how to illuminate the world until after he had done it. The Wright brothers were bicycle mechanics in Dayton, Ohio. No one believed you could fly. They had been trying it for years.
But they saw it.
But they wanted to do it. They didn't know how, and they couldn't tell you until after they had done it. Now, the first flight only lasted 12 seconds. And the naysayer said, yeah, but they only were up there for 12 seconds. They said, we not only got up there, we kept the damn thing up there for 12 seconds. So when a person sets a goal, they've got to say, what could I want if I just let my mind just wander? Visions, pictures that we build in our mind. Most people don't use their imagination constructively. Most people use their imagination destructively. They imagine what they don't want. We've got to consciously and deliberately imagine what we do want. If we will take and sit down with a pen and ask ourselves, what do I really want? What do I really want? And write it down. And then make a written description of it in the present tense. Writing causes thinking. Thinking creates an image. And you get these images going, you're building a vision in your mind. It's the visionaries that's changed the world. Think of that. The fact that I can sit and look into this camera, and you can sit and look at me on your phone, or on your TV, or on your laptop. That was the result of somebody's vision. Do you know everything you've got, the clothes you wear, the house you live in, this microphone that's in front of me, it was all the result of somebody's vision. It's not an accident. You and I have a marvelous imagination. And everything starts with a vision.
Select a person who is already doing something that you'd like to do. Get to know that person. Go to the experts for advice. Don't ask the person next door, your mother, father, brother, or the guy that works beside you, because they don't necessarily know. There's no point in asking a person how to earn a lot of money if they're only earning $10,000 a year. They don't know. If they knew, they'd probably be earning a lot. It's like, don't go to a sick doctor if you want to get healthy.
Okay.
So you find someone that you can go to for advice. Get a real good book and lock into that book and start to study it. Like, I've had this one that looks like a Bible, you know. But this is Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. I've been reading this thing now for 23 years. I'll probably read it for another 23 years. I get another good book that I brought over here today. It's called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Now, I'm not getting a commission for selling this. The author's dead now. He's been gone for a couple of years. But Dr. Joseph Murphy wrote this book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And that's probably one of the best books that you're ever going to find, because you're going to learn something about your mind when you read this book.
Okay.
Now, I read a lot of books. I've got probably 1,000 books sitting in my den at home in my library. But the one that I carry it everywhere I go, and I read it all the time, is Think and Grow Rich. I never stop reading it.
Now, where's the value for you to reread that and read it again? I mean, you must know it well enough that...
I think I could probably recite it verbatim. But the secret is, I once read in a book where it said, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it that you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. You see, when I read this, I create a greater awareness.
You know, many years ago, I read a book by Terry Cole Whitaker. It was a classic. What you think of me is none of my business. Think of the amount of time that is wasted on negative energy, wondering what other people think of you. What they think of you really doesn't make any difference. It's what you think of you that makes a difference. So, as you go through the day, don't worry about what other people think of you. Just say, I'm all right. I'm God's highest form of creation.
See this line? That's called the terror barrier. Yeah, jumping at you, isn't it? And on the other side of the terror barrier is something we call freedom. And you know, very few people get through that terror barrier. It's rather sad. Freedom is available to everyone. There isn't anyone that cannot live the way they want to live. See? Why don't they? Why don't they? They don't know. And they don't even know they don't know. Now I'm going to show you why people experience buyer's remorse when they buy something they really want, and then they back away, or they go to move and they don't. They go to change jobs and they don't. They go to move to another city and they don't. Why? Fear causes them to stay where they are. There's the individual. The X represents the unknown factor, the paradigm. Now, there's a power flowing into this individual's mind, and they can make anything out of it they want. Remember we said we had the ability to choose? What do they choose? They choose thoughts that are in harmony with the paradigm. Now, here's an important point. The paradigm controls the vibration of this thing we call our body. Our body is a molecular instrument. That's really what it is. It's a mass of molecules and a very high speed of vibration. The vibration that the body's in on a conscious level, we call feeling. When a person says they feel this way or they feel that way, what they're really doing is describing the vibration they're in. Now, they choose thoughts that harmonize with the vibration they're in, so they feel comfortable. They may not like the results, but they're comfortable. Now, let's move ahead. Let's take a look here. Those people are getting X-type results and they don't like it. Do you know what the problem with them? They're in bondage. These people are locked up. Do you know, paradigm is like keeping a person in a prison, only there's no locks on the door. They can open the prison and walk out into freedom anytime they want, and they don't. They keep getting the same results over and over and over again. They're in bondage. Now, let's go ahead. Here's the same person. X-type conditioning, X-type vibration. The power's flowing into them. And for some strange reason from left field, boom, in comes a Y-type idea. What is a Y-type idea? The Y-type idea represents anything that you might want to do that you're not doing. It might be move to another city, change jobs, sell the house, buy the farm, whatever it may be. Ask the little girl for the date. Ask the guy to go to lunch. Go make the sale. Buy what you want. Go where you want to go. That's the Y idea. But as long as the Y idea is just in the conscious mind, it's just going to be an intellectual exercise. It's never going to happen. So how do we make it happen? Well, that's when everything goes haywire. Here we are here. Same person, okay? The power flows in. And what do? They got the Y-type idea. Now, for some strange reason, they know that they've got to get emotionally involved if they're going to act on that idea. They don't understand what's going to happen, but clearly understand this. Your central nervous system is the most complex electrical system in the universe. The central nervous system is mind-boggling. It would make the electrical system in a supercomputer look like a toy. Now, the second you take the idea from your intellect and impress it upon the subjective mind, that's when all hell breaks loose. Because the body moves in to an XY vibration. It's not in the X vibration, not the one that we're comfortable with. May not like the results, but we're comfortable. No, on a conscious level, everything's going crazy. On a conscious level, we experience doubt. The doubt turns into an emotion called fear, and that fear is expressed through the body as anxiety. See, that person is getting emotionally involved to move ahead. Do you know what happens? They hit that terror barrier, and they bounce off it and right back into bondage. And they're so relieved to get back there. They're back where they're comfortable. They've canceled the sale. They've decided not to move. They're going to stay in the job that they don't like. At least they're comfortable. Now, that's not a very good way to live. And you know something? That's something everybody experiences if they're going to grow. You're going to hit that terror barrier. See, the terror barrier is going beyond where you're at, going to a new level. I'm going to tell you something. When I set a goal, if it doesn't scare and excite me at the same time, I know I'm going in the wrong direction. Now, I also understand that my paradigm is going to try and get me to bounce back to where I was. It doesn't want me to move ahead. I don't want to live there. I lived there for the first 26 years of my life. And for the last 50, I've had a phenomenal life. And it just keeps getting better. And I want you to do the same thing. Understand what I've just said. I'm going to back this up. They got emotionally involved in the Y idea. That moved their body into a different vibration. On a conscious level, they're experiencing some crazy stuff. They start to doubt their ability, they'll never be able to pay for it. They experience fear. The fear expresses itself as anxiety. And bang, you bounce off that terror barrier and you're right back. Oh, I might not be earning much here, but I know what it is. I would love to move there, but I'm comfortable here. I think I'll just stay here. These people are acting like they have a contract to live forever. And they don't. Do you know what to do? Say, I'm going to get rid of all that. I understand it's there, but I don't want any part of it. And I'm going to go crashing right through that terror barrier. Now, does that get rid of the X energy? No. The X energy is still there, you see. But at least you're over into freedom. You made the move. You did it. And if you continue to feed the right information into your mind, keep feeding that Y idea. Keep getting emotionally involved in the Y idea. You're there. You're on the road. Keep doing that. You're going to find that the paradigm is going to change and it'll just all go away. And you know where you're living? In freedom. You're living where you want to live. Buyer's remorse is when you cancel the sale. Buyer's remorse is when you stop just before you buy what you really want, before you go for the thing that's going to change your life and you know it. It's not moving to the other city. It's not starting the business of your dreams. It's not stepping out and betting on yourself. That's a terror barrier that's causing that. And if you don't learn to go through the terror barrier, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to stay right where you are for the rest of your days. That's not a good place to be. What did Joseph Campbell say? So true. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
You know, Dr. Maxwell Maltz wrote a book back around 1960. It was called Self-Image Psychology, Psycho-Cybernetics. It's a phenomenal book. He said it was the greatest discovery of his generation. He was a cosmetic or reconstructive surgeon, and he found he would do work on people. He might have done a nose job or removed a terrible scar. And he noticed that when he did that, there was a phenomenal change in their personality. But he noticed with others, he would make a phenomenal physical change and there was no change in their personality. And that led him to postulate that we have two images. We have the one that's coming back from the mirror, but we've got an inner image. And that inner self-image is literally controlling our life. You will find people that have a very poor self-image or low self-esteem. They won't look you straight in the eye. They're afraid to shake hands with you. They're very shy and withdrawn. They go through life hiding from life. They don't like themselves. They don't know themselves. Do you know when a person improves their self-image, they change their entire life? Their income changes, their relationship changes, their health changes. And do you know how you do that? Start studying you. Start to find out more about you. There's something phenomenal about you. Do you know when I began to study this material 57 years ago, I had very poor self-image. I had low self-esteem. I took dumb jobs. I never earned any money. I never had fun. I had poor relationships. And as I started to study real solid information, everything in my life started to improve. I've got friends all over the world today. I earn millions of dollars. I'm in my 80s and I got as much energy as a person in their 30s. Do you see, when you start to understand really who you are, you're God's highest form of creation. There's things about you that just about blow your mind as you start to study and really understand them. You'll walk a little taller. You'll stand a little straighter. And you know something? You'll enjoy a whole lot more of life.
You've got to wake up. You see, all we're ever going to get is awareness. We've already got everything. The only thing we lack is the awareness of what we've got. We're God's highest form of creation. There's nothing on the planet that will equal us. Well, that's all any of us are after. All the problems in the world come from ignorance. That's the purpose of life, to overcome ignorance, develop awareness. The only way to overcome ignorance is through knowledge. And the only way to get the knowledge is to study. Most people, they finish school, close the book, say, that's over. I'm never going to open another book as long as I live. They're screwed. It's all over.
Do you know the people you surround yourself with have a phenomenal impact on your life? I think it was Carl Menninger from the Menninger Foundation one time said, environment is more important than heredity. The people we're surrounded by have a greater bearing on our life and our success in life than what's built into the genes at birth. There's genetic conditioning, there's environmental conditioning. Well, this environmental conditioning goes on all the way through life. You will find as you improve the quality of your life, improve your thinking, you're going to attract a different group of people into your life. And they are going to add to your life. See, the people we're surrounded by, their thinking is going right into our mind. We want to mix with people who are really making it happen. Take a look at your 5 people that you're with most often and ask yourself, if I have children, would I want them to grow up be like them? If the answer is no, you better start looking for some new friends. If the answer is yes, you're already in the right circle of people. Think about what I'm saying. The people we're surrounded with have a phenomenal impact on our life and help make us who we are. William James from Harvard said, believe and your belief will create the fact. All things are possible if you believe. Well, you know, I studied for a long time. I started to study this book, Think and Grow Rich. And he talks about belief in here. He says, you're not ready for what you want until you believe you can get it. I found that the only two sources of reference we could go to find out anything about ourselves is science and religion. They all say you've got to believe. So I got figuring out, how do you believe? How do you change a belief? Interesting subject, because I'm going to tell you something. Your results are nothing but the manifestation of your belief system. Well, our belief system, now listen carefully, is based upon our evaluation of something. And frequently when we reevaluate a situation, our belief about that situation will change. Let me repeat that. Our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something. Frequently, if we reevaluate a situation, our belief about it will change. I began reevaluating who I was. I started to study. I never stopped studying. And I found as I reevaluated, I had a much higher opinion of myself. I found out things about me that I would have never believed if you had told me. The power that's locked up within us, the marvelous system we've got. Do you know the blood circulates through your veins every 33 seconds, through hundreds of miles of passageway? Bang, just like that, clears all the food in and all the garbage out. Stop and think of the central nervous system. It's the most complex electrical system in the world. And you've got it. Think of your brain, an electronic switching station like that. You can change the vibration of yourself and everything around you. We have awesome powers, and it's all based on what you believe about you.
I don't think you determine what your purpose is. I think you discover what your purpose is. There's a difference. Determining indicates deciding. And I don't think you decide. I think if you go about it the right way, you discover it. Like there's some people that should be painting all day. They're great artists. I think Michelangelo was obviously a great artist, a great sculptor. I mean, that was his purpose in his life. Well, I believe my purpose is doing what I'm doing. Your purpose is why you get out of bed in the morning. Do you know why you get up? Well, most people say, well, it's to go to work. Well, that'd be a good reason to stay in bed. You know, you say, well, everybody's doing it. That'd be another reason to stay in bed. If you're ever doing what everybody's doing, you're probably going in the wrong direction. Your purpose is your reason for living. What you want to do is sit down and maybe take a pen and a pad and then ask yourself, what do I really love doing? Now, you may have to spend a while at this. You might get up an hour early every morning and go sit under a tree somewhere if you're in a nice climate, or pick a favorite chair, someplace where you're not going to be disturbed, and totally relax and say, if I could spend my life doing something, what do I really love doing? Now, since you don't ask yourself that question every day, it might take a while for this answer to come to the surface. But it comes to your consciousness. And it may take a while. You may have to do this every morning for 3 months. But it would be well invested.
How many times have you had somebody say to you, hey, have you got a minute, Bob? Have you got a minute? They don't want a minute. I want you to think about that. I read a poem one time. It said, I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. It was forced upon me. I can't refuse it. I didn't seek it and I didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. It's only a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Well, at any rate, I thought I'm going to put this on a video and I'm just going to share it with everybody. Just this one little part out of the seminar I'm making. I want you to look at this sand timer and I want you to think about your life. The sand in the top of the glass represents the future. The sand in the bottom of the glass represents the past. Now, do you know, we know what's in the past and yet we can't do anything about it. Do you know what the trick is? You don't know how much sand's in the top of the glass. You may think you have a lot, you might only have a little. Then again, you may think you have a little and you might have a lot. When I was a little boy, I was raised by my grandmother.
And I don't know, when I was a little gaffer, she was probably 60, but as long as I can remember, Grandma would say, "I'll soon be gone, dear, I'll soon be gone." Well, you know, we loved her. She was really an angel of God, but we thought she was never going to go. She lived to be 94 for 30-some years. "I'll soon be gone." She didn't think she had much time left. She had 34 years left. Now, about the same time, I had a buddy of mine, Bob Yates. He was just 16. And bang, he ran into the abutment of a bridge and his life was snuffed out. If you had asked him a half hour before how much sand he had left, he would have said at least a half a century. He didn't have a half an hour. See, the trick is we don't know how much sand we have left. The future, we don't know. The past, it's gone. Now, the only thing you can deal with is what's right here, right now. And if you look, the sand is always moving. Now, think of this. You see, I was working on that, and then I was working on a graph I've got here on my computer, and I'm thinking of the time somebody said, "Hey, have you got a minute?" Well, they don't really want a minute. Do you know if you're earning $50,000 a year, a minute's 42 cents? A half hour is $12.50. If we take that ahead a bit, if you're earning $80,000 a year, a minute's 67 cents. Half hour is $20. If you're earning $150,000 a year, you got a minute? It costs you $1.25 a minute. A half hour is $37.50. So you see, if somebody said, "You want to stop for a cup of coffee?" Well, if you're earning $250,000 a year, a minute is $2.08. Half hour is $62.50. And then, of course, you got the coffee to pay for on top of that. So you see, the point is this. This is all we've got right here, right now. We don't know how much we have left in the future, but we do know what we've got now. And I have found the people that win are the people who make up their mind. They're not going to waste the minutes. They're going to be productive. They're going to make it happen every minute.
He said that success was the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Anyone that has a goal and they're moving towards it, they're successful. Most people think that you're successful if you have a lot of money. Quite often you have a lot of money if you're successful, but it isn't. I wouldn't say Mother Teresa has a lot of money.
Okay.
No, but she's a pretty successful lady. So it's...
Okay, so that barrier to success...
Well, there's a couple of them.
Okay.
I think there's two barriers. One is our conditioning. The conditioning that takes place in our subconscious mind from the time we're infants. All we can do is act and talk like the people around us. That's why we learn the language we learned. If there was 10 languages spoken in our home, we'd learn 10 languages without any trouble. There's usually one, and that's the only one we ever learn. And we grow older and we think, "Oh, I couldn't learn another language." We could learn 100 if we wanted to. You can do anything. But I think we're conditioned. We have a real strong conditioning, usually with not some very good ideas. And then that's the barrier that's inside us. The one that's outside of us is our environment. We have a tendency to act like everybody around us. And if you think about this, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because if you study statistics, 95% of the people live their entire life and never live the way they want to live. Do you know that 95% of the population in this country, let's say in North America,
Okay.
the richest continent in the history of the world, they'll work productively, let's say for 40 of their 65 years,
Okay.
and they'll end up with hardly any money. Well, there's got to be something wrong.
So there's not much...
5% of the people end up financially comfortable or independent.
Are you trying to depress us, Bob? Because that's...
No, actually, I think it's quite an exciting idea, because you see, the idea behind it is that anybody can win, anyone at all. But if we start studying these statistics, I think we'll arrive at the conclusion, geez, I better start thinking for myself rather than follow everybody. Most people, they get a job, they look around, they see how everybody else is doing their work, and they start doing it the same way. They should stop and think, I wonder if any of these people know what they're doing. You know, is there a better way to do it?
But don't we have a need to fit in? I mean, we don't want to stand out. We don't want to get fired. We don't want to make waves.
Exactly. Just fall into line. You know, take a number. Be like everybody around. You know, that'd be great in the animal kingdom. But human beings aren't supposed to live that way. I think we should make a few waves. We should maybe stand out, be different. Not for the sake of being different,
Okay.
but because we are different. We all think different thoughts. And I believe we should start to think and build images in our mind of what we'd like to do and then set out and do it.
Okay,
Emerson did that, Edison did that, Marconi did that, Samuel Morse did that, Buckminster Fuller did that. We could go on and on and on.
Okay.
They were different. They stood out. They made a few waves.
You know, Napoleon Hill, in Think and Grow Rich, wrote an entire chapter on decision. Most people never make decisions. They have a difficult time with it. Why is that? I think they have a difficult time because their parents made decisions for them until they were too old. And they never learned how to make them. Do you know, the one thing that I did with my kids, I never made a decision for them. They didn't like it. They'd say, come on, don't do that to me. And I said, no, what do you think you should do? And I'd leave it at that. Decision making is a phenomenal concept. And you're going to find out, as he points out in here, that successful people make decisions very fast and they change them very slow, if and when they change them at all. And he said the people that have difficulty in life make their decisions very slow and then change them fast and often. And you know, decision making is a funny thing. You and I think on frequencies. If we could see a bunch of lines and we're thinking on a frequency, and we're on this frequency here and we say, I'm going to do that when this changes. This is never going to change until you get up on this frequency. See, the good that you're after is on a higher frequency than you're operating on, a greater awareness. And if you're down here and you're thinking here on this frequency, and the good you want up here, you got to get your mind up there. How do you get up there? Make the decision, be there. And that's really what you have to do. The second you make a decision, you flip your brain onto a different frequency, and you start to attract things to you that you'd never get without making the decision. See, someone woke me up. That's all I want to do with someone else. What the man said to me, the first guy, he said, you can have whatever you want. Well, you know, you get thinking that you can get out of the box. That's why you've been given an imagination, to get out of the box. It's with your imagination that you build images of what you want. And if you can build the image, you can do it. You can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. When we understand that, like I would imagine this goes out to a lot of athletes, does it? Well, they can have anything they want. They got to pay the price. And when doubt comes in, kick it out. You can't afford the doubt.
If I want to do something, I find somebody that's already done it. And then I do exactly what they tell me. It's a simple rule to follow. I don't read novels. I don't watch movies. I'd watch documentaries or things like that where I can learn. I'm only interested in studying something that can cause me to become more of what I'm capable of being. See, I think we're all hardwired to do something really special with our life. And that's all I want to do. I'm really good at what I do. I could walk by a person in the hall and like that, I could tell them exactly what they're like. I could read their energy like a book. Everything goes on the inside, shows on the outside. See, we're gifted with faculties of the mind that the average person knows nothing about. You have intuition, the will, reason, imagination, perception, memory. That's what separates us from all the rest of forms of life. We go through school and never learn anything about it. Like you'll hear people say they have a bad memory. There's no such thing as a bad memory. Everybody has a perfect memory. It's just weak. They've never developed it. Our imagination. Your imagination is the most magnificent. Hill said it's the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world's ever known. I can use my imagination to project myself into the future and bring the future into the present and start living there. You work from the imagination. You don't work to it. You work from it.
Backwards from the result.
Yeah. Look at these two men. Do you know who they are? Most people don't. They're just a couple of ordinary guys. One, they're both gone now, but one was an ordinary beekeeper in Auckland, New Zealand, and the other a Sherpa guide from over around Nepal. Now there's Mount Everest. Do you know for thousands of years people had tried to get to the top of Mount Everest? People died doing it. It was believed it couldn't be done. People tried, but they didn't know how, and so they quit. There's a closer look at the mountain and where they placed their flag. They planted that flag in the mountain. Now this is the two of them after they come down the mountain. And you know something? When they started, they did not know how.
They didn't know how to get to the top of the mountain. And that's what stops most people, because they don't know how. As little kids, we'd go, Mommy, Daddy, I want this. And they say, now, how are you going to do that? Well, as a little kid, you don't know how to do it. But they did it. In 1953, on the 29th of May, they were the first two to get to the top of that mountain. They stood right on top of the world. Do you know there's been over 1,000 people do it since then? I watched a young woman on Canadian television being interviewed, not very big. She had just come back from going to the top of Mount Everest. And the reporter asked her, they said, how does it feel now that you conquered the mountain? She said, we didn't conquer the mountain. That mountain can't be conquered. We conquered the limitations that are within ourselves.
Many years ago, I read where Napoleon Hill pointed out that the imagination is the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force that the world has ever known. And you know, the average individual uses the imagination, if they use it at all, against themselves. They imagine what they don't want. They imagine problems coming. Let's begin to use our imagination the way God meant it to be used. It's the greatest creative faculty that we possess, and we can build anything we want with it. I want you to wander around your home or possibly your office and take a look at all of the conveniences that you have there that you didn't have, let's say, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago, 25 years ago. Do you know that every one of them, without exception, was first created in the mind of one individual with their imagination? Do you know you can use your imagination to go into the future and bring it into the present? That's what all highly successful people do. They see where they want to go, and then they act like the person they want to become. It was William James from Harvard's advice. He said it's the actor's technique. Act like the person you want to become. How do you do that? Well, you use your imagination, of course. You see, it's a strange phenomena, but the greatest gift we've got is used very well up till the ages of 4 or possibly 5. The little child, we always wonder what's going on in their mind. They're using their imagination. They're building wonderful pictures in their mind. But then they get to school, and wham, like that, it comes to an abrupt halt. It's called not paying attention. Daydreaming. Well, what they were really doing was exercising a phenomenal mental faculty. You see, we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. They're for our physical benefit. As long as we're living in a physical body and corresponding with the material world, we will use our sensory factors. But you know, I have a couple of little dogs at home that can hear, see, smell, taste, and touch. We've got higher faculties. You have perception, the will, memory, intuition, reason, and imagination. These marvelous tools. We can take our imagination and build an image in our mind of how we want to live. Block out what's going now. Don't let your present results have anything to do with this. Just what you want. And it's with your imagination that you will build it. Everything that we have, the camera that I'm speaking to right now, was first created in the mind of one individual. Think of how our world's changed. You see, we were gifted with these higher faculties. We're God's highest form of creation. We were created in God's image. We were given creative faculties to use. And you know, they're only used by 2 or 3% of the population. It's almost inconceivable that people would wander around with so much power and potential and squander it. See, the average person literally tiptoes through life, hoping they make it safely to death. It's such a shame, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think we have giant corporations and little wee creative departments. And the primary reason for that is the average individual really does not believe that they're creative. Now think. Everyone's creative, and no one is more creative than another. It's just that some have chosen to use their creative faculties to a greater degree than others. Imagination, your imagination. What do you want? How do you really want to live? Build the picture in your mind. There's a power that is flowing to and through you. A creative, unadulterated power. It can be photographed leaving your body. Way back in the 30s, Semyon Kurlin, the Russian photographer, perfected a form of photography where you can actually photograph a person's body and you will see the energy glowing from them. Well, that energy flows into your mind. And it's the images you build in your mind that's going to dictate the vibration that this instrument you're living in is in. And the vibration on a conscious level is called feeling. Make certain that you exercise your imagination daily. Build beautiful images in your mind of how you want to live, and then hold those pictures there and live that way. The imagination, the greatest nation in the world, the imagination. You've got one. It's a marvelous creative tool. It deals with the invisible side of your personality. You see, no one will ever really see you. They'll only see your body, and they'll see you the great work that you do. Make certain that your work is great work. And if you keep your imagination alive, keep it active, you're going to have a phenomenal life. You know, life can get better every day, and it will get better every day through the proper use of your imagination. What a wonderful idea. This is Bob Proctor. Thank you. Do you know that the law of attraction is always working? It's like the law of gravity. If I let this go, it's going to go down. It's never going to go back up. It's going to go down. That is the law of gravity. Anything heavier than Earth is attracted towards the center of the world. Well, the law of attraction is always working. Now, how does it work? Well, I use a diagram to explain the mind. Now let this circle represent your mind. And let this little circle here represent your body. Now I want you to think of this for a moment. Your body is a molecular structure. This is a massive energy and a very high speed of vibration. If you looked at your body through a microscope, you'd see that energy dancing right before your eyes. And here's something that'll keep you thinking for the next 20 years. When you move out of it, the body does not stop moving. If you go to a funeral parlor and pick up the remains and look at it, you will see it moving. And if it wasn't moving, how would it ever change to dust? You move into your body and you will move out of it. And it's how you use your mind that's going to dictate the vibration you're in. Now stay with me. You have an imaginary line right across here, and that separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind has been programmed. When you were a little baby, this is the way it was. You were just like this. Subconscious mind wide open, and everything that was going on around it went right in there. And all the energy that went in there when you were just a little baby formed something called a paradigm. Now, a paradigm is information. It's a multitude of habits. You are the product of your environment. But prior to that, you were the product of a genetic strain that goes back for generations. Now, I'm going to say that the paradigm is X-type energy. Now, you've got the ability here on a conscious level to think. And you can think anything you want to think. And as you think, you build ideas. There's a power that's flowing into your consciousness. It never stops. It flows to and through you. You can actually photograph this power leaving you. It flows to and through you.
Now, as it flows in, you will start thinking, and you'll probably think X-type thoughts. Therefore, you're going to be in an X-type vibration, and that will produce X-type results. Now, it's the results you want to change. And to change the results, you're going to have to change what you attract. You see, the thoughts that you think control the vibration that you're in. Vibration is nothing but an idea. It's a law of the universe. Everything vibrates, nothing rests. We live in an ocean of motion. And it's the thoughts that you're thinking that you impress upon your subconscious mind that control the vibration the body's in. And that dictates how you act, but it also dictates what you attract. You attract energy that's in harmony with you. You attract people that are in harmony with you. You see, everything operates on frequencies. There's an infinite number of frequencies, but you and I operate on a frequency just like a radio station does. And the only music you can attract is the music that is tuned into the vibration you're in. Now, it's the paradigm that has been controlling the vibration. You can change your thinking, but that doesn't do anything. You got to change the paradigm. And if you don't change the paradigm, nothing happens. Now, talking about paradigms is another subject. We'll do that at another time. But it's the thoughts that you think that control the vibration you're in, and that dictates what you attract. So if you keep attracting what you don't want, understand this. It's the paradigm that's causing the problem. You can think a Y-type thought, which is totally different than the X-type conditioning. It isn't going to go anywhere. Because when you go to get emotionally involved, and this is the emotional mind, when you go to get emotionally involved with that Y-type thought, the paradigm will kick it out. You know why? It's so uncomfortable. That's stepping out of the box. That's doing things different. And we don't like to do things different because it causes a lot of discomfort. But understand this, the paradigm and the thinking control the vibration you're in, and the vibration you're in is going to dictate what you attract. People that are in a poverty consciousness will continue to attract lack and limitation. It has nothing to do with this, what's going on here. This is your educated mind, and you could gather all kinds of information. Have you ever wondered why some people have such an educated mind? They have degrees coming right off the end of their business card, but it doesn't show up in their results. Why? Paradigm. The law of attraction. You've got to change this. You've got to change the vibration you're in, and your whole world changes. Listen, in 1961, a man gave me this book, and he said, do exactly what I tell you. He was giving me Y-type ideas. It caused an enormous amount of discomfort, but I did exactly what he said. And you know something? My income went from $4,000 to $175,000 in a year, and then I took it over $1 million. It took me 9.5 years to figure out what happened. This is what I'm showing you. Watch this over and over and over again. There's a number of lessons in here. And another lesson, I'm going to show you how to change the paradigm. When you change the paradigm, the change in results is automatic. You know why? You start to attract something new, something different. And what we want to do is program in positive information and eliminate the negative. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Law of attraction. You attract according to the vibration you're in. This thing we live in is a molecular structure. Your body is a mass of energy. Do you know if you put your body in front of an infrared television camera in a completely dark room, your whole being would be nothing but a glistening, radiating, gleaming form? Feeling is conscious awareness of the vibration we're in. When we don't feel good, we're in a negative vibration. You want to feel good? Move into a positive vibration. Stop and think of what you're grateful for. But understand this, you will never attract to you wealth, happiness, health until you get the paradigm and get you on that frequency. Why did a guy like me change? I didn't believe there was an emotional or capricious God reached out and said, let's give Bob a chance. I didn't believe that. I thought, something's happened. What's happened? Well, I spent 9.5 years studying with some absolutely brilliant people. Now, I formed a good habit over that time. I picked good mentors, and that's very important. You can use these films as a mentor. You can. You can let me be your mentor. Do you know, I've often heard it said people that have been gone for a couple of thousand years can help you more than somebody that's alive today. And I get a lot of help from people that have been gone for a long time through their books and writings. So you could use this series as a mentor. But a habit I formed right from the first person that helped me, Ray Stanford, he said, do exactly what I tell you. And for some reason, I decided I would. I didn't question him, I just did it. He said, do it until you find out I'm lying or I don't know what I'm talking about. And he said, I don't lie, and I do know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to say that to you, and hopefully you'll grasp it the same as I did. Do what I suggest in these films until you find out I'm lying or I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't lie. And believe me, I do know what I'm talking about. Many years ago, they said, by their results, you'll know them, or by their fruits, you'll know them. I searched every day, and every time I picked a new mentor, and I did pick new mentors, I did exactly what they said. It was difficult at first because what I was really doing was changing habit patterns. But they were teaching me things. They were teaching me information that the average person may never learn. I developed a very close rapport with them. And they were brilliant people, every one of them very accomplished. That is a good rule. If you want to do something, go to someone who has demonstrated by results they do know what they're talking about. Ask them, what should you do? Then do exactly what they tell you. Now, I know that works because I'm still doing it. And I do it every day. If I take the areas where I'm a little 6 bits short, I'm just not really very good, and I didn't go to school, so there's a lot of areas, I'm going to get the very best, and I'm going to do exactly what they tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did when the man who gave me this book, he said, do exactly what I'm telling you. I did exactly what he said. 15 years or so ago, well, first of all, he became my mentor and very good friend right up until he passed away. Our company was having financial problems all the time. And I could earn all kinds of money, but I don't know how to manage it. Didn't know how to run a company. I mean, I wasn't designed for that. And I didn't want to learn it. I didn't even like the subject. But what you need, you will attract. And we had a lady come to seminar, was a securities attorney. She fell in love with what we were doing. She was a full partner in a company. And over a period of time, she became our business partner. She owns half the company. But she runs the company. She's the president, chief executive of the company. I mentioned to her last time, you should get her on for an interview sometime because she is a fascinating person. But she does a phenomenal job here.
Yeah.
Well, so I have found in the areas that I'm not very good at, I get the very best, and I work with them. I don't try and learn what they're teaching. I get them to do that. I get somebody else to do something else because it's going to take me to where I want to go. I have a young guy here that runs our studio. He's the director of the studio. He's absolutely brilliant. He set a goal when he was 13 to work with me.
I remember this.
He was living in Manchester in England, and he watched The Secret, and he saw me. He said, I'm going to work with him. 13 years later, he's here in the studio, and he runs this place.
I love that.
He's incredible. He can record and send it from anywhere in the world. He can come in here and do everything. And I found that's one of the secrets of getting to where you want to go. You need help. You got to have help. You got to have a lot of help.
You're saying we can't just do it all on our own, Bob?
Never going to do it on your own. You won't go very far if you're doing it alone. You should seek failures. See, if you're playing it safe, you're not going to win. If you're playing it safe, like that old saying, you know, you were taught when you're a little girl, better to be safe than sorry. Well, that's a bunch of crap. It's not better to be safe than sorry. It's by trying things that you figure out how far you can go. You got to get outside the box. Like it's reported, Edison tried 3,000 ways before he built the incandescent light. He said he didn't fail 3,000 times. He said there was 3,000 different steps to building a light bulb. Well, there's different steps to get to where you're going.
And I really do treat winning and losing exactly the same. I do not let it upset me.
Do you think that's a big part of why you're so successful?
Well, it's part of why I enjoy it. Yeah, I think it is, because I'll try anything. Like if I'm into an idea, the idea of losing never enters my mind. See, I have worked with giants. I had the good fortune of working with Sir Edmund Hillary. He was the first man to stand on top of the world. And I worked with him on 3 different occasions. And the only difference in Ed Hillary and Bob Proctor is in his size. Now, he's gone now, but he was a big man. When he shook hands with me, his hand wrapped right around mine. I felt like a dwarf, you know. And in talking to him, like, it never entered his mind he wouldn't get to the top of the mountain. But he failed in 1951. He failed in 1952. It wasn't until 1953 that he got to the top of the mountain. Now, people had died for centuries trying to do that. But he said, I knew if I could see it in here, I could hold it out here. Stella Mann wrote that in a book. If you can see it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And that's right. And if you're not prepared to lose, you're never going to win.